I ended up taking the train out to like a part of town I didn't know.
What
And
if
then
it
I
was
rode
this, like,
the
elaborate setup she was trying to do for you, like a meet cute?
Not at all.
And this was like the most clumsy, poor way she like happened to think of it as. And she's like, "Oh no, my plate.
right.
I guess you're gonna
have
to have Thanksgiving with all these strangers and a cutie."
Maybe that is what she thought.
And a cutie.
And a cutie. I don't think she thought about me that much to do something like that.
That probably is the most logistical answer. Like that's probably likely what it is.
That's not me being.
But that's but that's
the truth.
That is the truth. But that's not to say it isn't fun to like think of the alternative as a
to be neurotic,
as a thought exercise.
Yes, thought exercise.
You say it's neurotic. I say thought exercising is important to do daily. Name. Hourly. Hey, Victoria.
Oh, hey, Chelsea.
You know what I could use?
What could you use?
A breath of fresh movie.
Me too.
That's a movie I like to see.
This is Breath of Fresh Movie, a weekly podcast where me, Victoria Harley,
and me, Chelsea Pope,
we watch a movie neither one of us has ever seen before, and then we talk about it.
Meow.
And we may not talk about everything.
But we're going to talk about anything, so
That's
just
right.
Spoilers ahoy.
Mm-hmm.
Ding,
ahoy.
ding.
Ahoy.
They're coming at you. We're not going to... We might say the ending right now and then something from the beginning that alluded to that like 50 minutes from now.
That's true.
So just...
Yeah.
That's on you, man.
Yeah.
This is your consent.
It's true. It's true.
But
okay,
that being said, please keep listening.
Yeah, if anyone's still there, today's episode is the tragic comedy, The Banshees of Inisherin, directed by Martin McDonagh. We got some great Irish names, so lean into your brogue today if you've
Absolutely.
got one. This is a film that takes place in Ireland on a remote island. Pádraic, is that how it's pronounced? Because his name is the Gaelic form of Patrick. Certain sounds, like in French or in other things, kind of get absorbed a bit, you know?
Yeah.
Like certain things don't register.
Yeah.
You don't pronounce that part, or it's pronounced in this incredibly subtle way.
You bring up a good thing to discuss with this film, which is just that dialect and the way lines and the intent behind them are delivered. Like that is a very culturally specific thing that is depicted in this with the, like Irish early 1900s like Irish culture.
Yeah,
and,
1920s. Yeah.
You know, so it's just be mindful. These are going to be some of the questions that are coming up. You're going to hear somebody say probably something that was just like, "What is your donkey?" Or whatever. I can't. Anyway, just someone's going to say something really basic, and you're suddenly going to be thinking about like the nuances of that. So I don't know. Just kind of surrender yourself to that.
I think that's what's nice about it, though, is like
vernacular, I guess, because it's apparent.
This is a movie, right, about one friend suddenly ending friendship with another friend. I know that's 3 friends in there, but Colm, that's the name I do know.
And like naming the, for me, I think the thing is, I still feel like I have a very childlike
we can also just be like,
film.
Colin Farrell does this.
Like low-key, I'm kind of in that. I know he played
can lean into that.
Patrick.
The way I was trying to remember it was because it reminded me of the way people said Yorick.
Yeah. Oh, last Yorick.
Yes, so I was like, oh.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
So
I think for me, though, it's just quintessential. The culture and the time and just the setting is such a big part of this film.
Oh, my God.
And that's why everything is happening the way it's happening. Essentially, it's just that they're a product of their environment and their respective takeaways from this history, culture, tradition, and their place in it. And that's why it's like someone would sacrifice a friend. Anyway, I'm spiraling. It's just these projections people have based on their own country's history, their own.
And there's
their
also
own land's history.
The entire canon of movies set in Ireland. You know, one detail I learned about was the director wanted to stay away from a lot of the Irish fiddle in the score. I mean, it's featured, of course, as a, Colin
but he didn't want to lean on it as like a tropey thing.
And I'm so grateful he didn't because I'm half Irish, but even I feel a bit, I don't know, sort of embarrassed. Not because, I love Ireland, and I love my Irish roots, but it's like such a, like when growing up, it was like, oh, everybody was Irish, or German, like the community I grew up in. So it didn't feel that special. And then I think there's a kind of American romanticization or there's like fantasy Americans have about Ireland. And
I think that, just speaking again on that, on a little bit of an outsider, I have some
basically
Irish in my history, but it's the idea of like projecting onto like, oh, this was like the ultimate European simpler time. This is sort of like the projection of what like Irish culture. And you think of the green hills and the potatoes and the fucking leopard, like
sheep.
You think of it being this almost fantastical, like pastoral life. Place. It's the idea of the American. You know, you think of what's the name of that fucking painting with the wife and the husband with the pitchfork or whatever.
American Gothic.
Right. So it's, you know, you're thinking like that's the like the apotheosis. That's like the peak of it where it becomes sort of uncanny. But it's like anything before that is just the idea of you're projecting on this like simplistic. This is the way, you know. It's almost it's a mix of pastoral and fantastic, which is part of why people like romanticize hobbits and stuff, because there's a lot of obviously overlap.
I mean,
there.
I think there's a lot. Yeah,
there's this sort of like a longing for a simpler life that was just sort of like,
this feels authentic to some kind of living, but I'm glad that at one point we saw a calendar page to tell us what year it was, because to be honest, I had a hard time. All I mean by that is that I think there's parts of Ireland where I think this kind of lifestyle does actually still exist.
Still persists.
Yes. But this is a very remote Ireland we're seeing. We're seeing an Irish island on the West Coast.
In spite of the time and like the fact that they do set a clear setting is interesting, because they could have just as well not done that.
Yeah.
And you could have been left questioning how recent the times were.
Yeah. I mean, because they make reference
to
the war that's going on. And
right.
You know.
So, you know, it is in the context, again, I like emphasize that that's important, but they make choices to show you how that is important, and this ought to be perceived as a past story.
And that this is a remote area of Ireland.
Yeah, it's like deliberate distancing.
Exactly. And I think there are parts of the cities are still quite modern and have all those things, and you get
so you could get confused, right? You could think like maybe this is how the Guard had moments like that with Brendan, right? Yeah, I've had to kind of hesitate for a second, because he and his son have both had pretty active careers, and I've accidentally labeled one as the other before. Like it's true. I find that charming though a little bit too. It also gives me the false perception of like how microcosmic or like how small Ireland is, even though like they just happen to be father and son. Like obviously there's a ton of people in there. It's all one big tree. That's not true.
It's funny, like what you're saying is true and not true, because I saw an Irish stand-up recently. He discovered that someone in the audience was Irish too, and he's like, "Oh, you're kidding? Where are you from?" You know, and then they discovered, "Oh, you're from the same county," and like, "Oh, did you go there? Oh, is your mother Mrs. McKinnon?" Like, oh my god,
how small is that? Like that's so important. This is all relevant. It's part of the movie. It's just that neighborly quality of this. There's a part of me that almost felt like this was like a Simpsons episode. It's like it's the idea of like how much can take away and can have there's a everybody knows each other kind of vibe.
Right, we get that from
a community
Mrs.
that's
O'Riordan a lot. The way she opens the mail.
Absolutely. I mean, there's like people just have these sort of expectations, kind of like, oh, you kind of like there is a little bit of almost like a Cheers-esque like quality people have.
Everyone knows everybody's business.
All the more reason when it gets as serious as this film does, it's like even more heartbreaking, because it's that ultimate.
It's on display for everyone to see.
And how do you like? Because the way everybody did react to it, and you know the bartender, whatever, Dom, you know, they're all kind of like, oh, this is, you know, they can take it a little bit dry, nonchalantly, and then as it's really happening, people are genuinely like taken aback, because
it's serious.
We're breaking that sort of the sort of like ho-hum neighborly, you know. Yeah,
the contract is being violated.
The hobbits are getting mad. I'm sorry. No. I just, you know, you know it's obviously designed after that.
Oh,
so
no.
It just has that vibe a little bit.
It definitely had
shit, that's when Bilbo's fangs come out.
I went to, we both saw this in a theater, and there was something about the very beginning of it that, like, I know this is billed as a comedy, although tragic comedy certainly is a more accurate way to describe it. But
it doesn't immediately paint that way.
It didn't feel funny out the gate to me, and I'm not saying that with disappointment. I was ready to just take it very seriously, but I felt people in the audience I think they felt they were expected to be laughing at that because the repetition of the lines.
How much of that like what did they come in with? How many other previews or trailers or interviews
it felt like a crowd
Twitter
that knew
talk
in Bruges, and
because of that pairing.
Yeah, and I think
is that being taken? Do you think that the directors deliberately and that casting that has to feel like it's a conscientious choice of like definitely we're subverting this?
No, he wrote this for them after they made In Bruges. Colin Farrell,
it's a nice
Gleeson,
version,
and Mark McDonagh are all friends.
Yeah,
and they would hang out together like once a year at least. And Martin McDonagh says he's like, I'm very lazy. I finally realized that if I wanted to get us all together again, I would have to write something.
This is good information. I feel like all the more reason this movie is highly contextual.
Yes,
it doesn't have to be for you to enjoy it, like, and to take away the essential story of it.
But it stands perfectly.
This really is. There's like a lot of meta kind of shit going on. With this
absolutely,
a little bit.
No, a ton.
And the motivation of it, and how the characters are depicted, what kind of stories being told.
Well, it begins so simply with the explanation of he's not talking to me, he's not there. He's like, are you rowing? I didn't think we were rowing. Maybe we are rowing. And and the audience really like latched onto that as a joke.
This reminds me a little bit because people were doing this a little bit in Los Feliz 3 when I went at like not that long ago, and it was kind of a half full audience, but I felt like people again
it really
specifically because of In Bruges and because of their other projections about these two specific actors who have done comedic things. They're expecting like something quippy to happen, so everything's being read
as
in
quippy.
that way.
And I maybe I was just in a mood, but I decided I was like, I'm not gonna give a laugh.
And that's how I felt about Amsterdam, which remember we were sitting there and we're both feeling like I don't know. I'm projecting. For me, I felt like part of me was like, am I being a dick? I'm not laughing at
that's not funny.
This is boomer bait. I'm not laughing at that just because you guys are. That's not a joke.
Exactly.
And this is. I think that's fair to do in this movie. Yes. And you're not wrong for having that reaction.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You acknowledge it.
You're the only one who would understand.
No, because I felt that way. I was like, I'm not going to be. This is why I sit in the back deliberately, because I don't want to feel like my reaction is.
It's nice to be able to also observe the room.
A little bit of that too, like just
cool
like,
kids sit at the back of the class.
Whatever. I hate people. I hate people.
I hate people too. I mean, the only thing I saw this at a theater where
I stay in this flowery. It's good. No, it's important. You have to see what objective reaction can remove you. Blah, blah, blah. No, I just don't. I don't want to sit next to fucking.
I don't want to sit next to anyone.
Susan.
So my first genuine laugh then was a Barry Keoghan moment, who is just. I've read interviews with him, and he said, "I don't like being thought of as a scene stealer. Yeah. I would prefer people to see my talent and think, hey, that's somebody who can hold a whole film."
Well,
but his line about, oh, I hate wars. I'm against them. Yeah. That and soap. Wars and soap.
I mean, there was it's kind of that's kind of a shared relation between you and who wrote that and who directed that. Like, it's like they have a specific reaction. There's a tone being set, and you're put in this position where it's like there's you gotta slay. I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, that's a fucking great line. And if you do it in the wrong way, what a waste of writing.
Oh yeah.
But then you do it in the way as intended, as projected. Yeah. Then now he has to feel guilt that like he fucking nailed it. Yeah. Like, this is the great line, and it's a great line, and he kills it.
And there's something about his performance that is, he described it as he was trying to be a little bit like a fox, kind of there but not there. And there was something about his body language too. Yeah. He kind of had that attention, that kind of sniffing around almost. Yeah. Kind of constantly.
But I think it ties in, the idea of wanting to participate, but not wanting to be overly perceived in the space. Like you want to engage, but you don't want to feel on the spot.
And I completely forgot that Colin Farrell and Barry Keoghan were in Killing of a Sacred Deer together, and they were excellent in that. Like, what a creepy...
I'm gonna go ahead and say a controversial. Actually, not that, because there are other people who agree with me, but like. Listen, there's that binary of like, I respect when something's good, but I don't like it. I just don't like this Killing of a Sacred.
It was a tense movie.
It made me angry. Really? And all the here's the thing, I went in blind, obviously, and like whatever, like, but just it was such a wildly unpleasant experience.
It is unpleasant.
I say this. Here's the thing, and there's people so well shot, blah blah blah, whatever. We want to talk about bastardized Kubrick.
Oh no.
And I love The Favorite. I like The Lobster. That movie was one I was watching and I was actively not enjoying it. And then every like stylistic choice was that's when I was feeling like big time. I was feeling like The Shining, and I was feeling big time like just someone trying to take in it just kind of. Mm-hmm. I say all of this to then say he fucking steals this movie. He steals this movie because at a certain point this relationship got really annoying. Yeah. And I just wanted to see somebody living in the space. Yeah. And feeling that and just like outside of that city, it's just someone who just can't find a place in it. And that's the most engaging and heartbreaking story told in this whole movie. Oh, and he absolutely killed it. And he kills it.
And there's something wise in his simpleness.
Yes.
Like
It's almost like he's the only person who figured it out and then no one else has.
Yeah.
And he's alone because of that.
And I love that he's got this interest in Siobhan, but in no way do you ever feel that it's predatory, you know? I mean,
no, he's actually very like, he's actually pretty direct. Like the moment he feels right, it's kind of a thoughtful time.
He builds up and you know what he's going to ask her. And so there's something I've been wanting to ask you. And it's a little bit agonizing, but then, you know, when she sort of gently rejects him.
Low key, good for her. Like because she didn't lie to him, she knew he didn't owe him any, but he also knew that too. Yeah, and that's what makes it sort of
and he, you know, that line of there goes that dream.
I saw someone already like did their little viral. At least a couple. I feel like people have tweeted
I heard
about
some
it.
hearts break. Like I heard it because I heard
that
this
was
sound.
Such a painful. Well, he just says it in the most. You know, he just says it's okay, you know.
It's okay.
Then he takes a few steps away, right? Then that takes that turn back. And you know I don't want to put down this film for how well it is all around, but that moment meant more than the rest of the film.
Wow.
For me.
For you. Yeah.
For me, because the story as engaging as the story is, this is a genuinely good movie. I'd give it like a solid 4 out of 5. It's just like, I think there's something about that vulnerability that like, at a certain point, I get fatigued by that dryness and that and that's part again with killing. I equate that going back to Killing of a Sacred Deer. We're so stuck in this like parable moral. We're so stuck in this like ironic kind of story that like I can't feel anything. I'm like there's a vacuum here, and so when you see that moment of tenderness of like failure and vulnerability, it's not that it wasn't disingenuous, the pain that the other characters are feeling necessarily in this film. No, but it's so stuck in this conundrum that I'm trying to logic as I'm going through it.
No, I think there's something very foolish about this friendship and this war that it's become.
And that's part of what makes it a comedy is how ridiculous, right? So then all the more reason that moment when Barry says what he says and then that happens, it's just like, this was like such a vulnerable, and if I feel like his character on the outside just trying to figure out what's going on, not really understanding the stakes, having an obvious, but like, whatever, a crush, whatever, and this thing's happening, you're in over, you don't know what to do to help.
And that poor bastard, the way his father treated him.
Yeah.
I mean, we get this layer upon layer of sadness. And he is like, well, that's just how it is sometimes. It's this incredibly...
There's an emotional callous in a lot of this film that is just so hard to... Yeah. Again, Barry, that situation and the fallout of that. And then... once it gets to the animals, once it gets to their animal companions and the sort of
we need to talk about the animals,
the purity, right, of animals and those companionships, and it's just like that's you're on another level of hurt there. That's really. Cole was already a fuck. Like I was, from the get, I'm just like, come on, what is going on? I get it. I'm feeling it.
I do think it's interesting. I think the director sort of expected people to either identify, like, who do you identify with? And I don't necessarily think it was immediately just a binary, but he seemed to imply that you either are more of a Colin Farrell, Podrick kind of guy who's just nice. Yeah. And niceness is a good thing. even if you're not everything.
Yeah.
Or are you more looking at Colum and feeling that sense of urgency he feels about time slipping away? And I must admit, at the start, I did identify more with Colum, just being kind of like, I can't listen to this shit anymore.
So I totally respect the idea of setting a boundary.
It goes fucking off the rails.
And it makes it's interesting because I say all this stuff the way it's like, how can like he's Pyrick, that's not fair because people, no one gets it. And then, but I understand with the rhetoric that goes around, not just online, but just so you talk to someone who cares about you, you're complaining about things, and you know what they're going to say. They're going to be like, cut them off.
Yeah.
You know what? You don't owe them an explanation. Right. You don't owe them anything.
That is okay. So the common.
Fucking block his ass. You owe him nothing, bitch. Like, just get the fuck out of there. Yeah. Okay? It is. So what? You live less than like half a mile from each other in the same small pastoral Irish village? Okay? You don't owe that fucker anything. Okay? He annoys you. You don't like the way he licks his lips between consonants. Cut his ass out. Cut them out. Cut them out if they hurt you. That's the vibe. That's, I'm not gonna lie, that's like when I'm looking at, like, it's hard not to laugh at that. That a little bit, because I just think that extreme is so like, it's toxic. It's small-minded to not acknowledge, just if you are in that kind, you have to think about your setting. You have to think about who you are involved with. Yeah. It's not just about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're living in a different time now. And so like there is sort of, it's almost like he's taking on this like postmodern or post-postmodern mindset of just removing toxicity.
Yes.
And not really thinking realistically how they are part of this very small microcosm and how that relates to the people around them.
It's an ecology. Like exactly. You can't do anything that
I almost think this
affect others.
The story feels like a thought experiment of what if somebody took that ideology of like cut them out and then and then it ran loose in this setting where it's the most impractical, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like Siobhan really is the one who figures out how to actually separate. Yeah. Physically.
I mean, literally. And she has to.
And she's so tired of them. She's like, it's so fucking boring. All you men and your stupid little, like, fights and your...
So our one main lady, and she's like, nope.
Nope, I'm out.
I'm noping out of this shit.
I thought it was very heartbreaking that, Pádraic doesn't understand this thing with Colum, and his lack of understanding is kind of heartbreaking. But then she leaves. Yeah. And he asks her, are you going to come back? And she's just like, oh, Pádraic. And he's like, don't say, oh, Pádraic. Say you're going to come back. And there's like, there's just the inability of things to get into his head. Yeah. I mean, he is a little dull. He is a little annoying. He's not. Yeah. He needs animals around him to.
Because it reminded me just a little bit of that. It reminded me a little bit of Nope. Just the idea of like, and I understand animals better. Right? They say what they mean what they say. Go over that vibe.
I could see it. Yeah,
just that idea. Of he's that kind of simple character that is like a little bit painted virtuous, but also it's getting a little unpacked here that like he would be very annoying to another person if this was how he always communicated.
Yeah, I did love the line about I'm not putting my donkey outside when I'm sad.
Yeah, right.
And the animals just coming into the house. I mean, there was something so...
He is simple, but it's wholesome, right?
Yeah. And, I mean, even at that... There's a moment at dinner, Dominic's there and Siobhan's there, and Dominic's like, well, touche. And he's like, to what? Touche. From the French. And it's like, even Dominic has one over on Pádraic. Like, it's... Like, what a shaming moment for him to feel even dumber. You know what I mean?
He is like a hopelessly earnest person, Yeah. He's someone who like, I totally can get where you would get sick of that. Yeah. But also, I don't know what the solution would be in that kind of environment.
And let's say we should, as much as I said, initially I identify with Colum. Colum is fucked up. I mean,
I think he just has these, not delusions of grandeur, but just this idea of like, what's my legacy outside of this environment? Yeah. And he's again, I feel like he has too much of a modern mind.
That is a very modern thing.
He's too individualistic for his own good.
Yeah.
And that's where he's thinking beyond sort of what his relation in the immediate and the community is.
I had some, like, when I say, like, he's fucked up, I mean it in, like, the most empathetic way. Because, you know, those scenes in the confessional with the priest, which all those scenes were great, but the reference to, like, the despair.
Yeah.
And that...
his ennui is real.
Oh, it's very real.
And so he's not wrong for having those feelings, but then how do you react to that? And then at this point, are we not just seeing him just sort of like busting loose because he did play along with it for so long, despite this internal like loneliness, this internal dissatisfaction? Yeah. So then that's why he's reacting in such a short fuse kind of, I'm going to start cutting off my fucking fingers now.
Yeah.
So then it's like, it's tough. You're not wrong. And I'm always just being like this pretentious but then on the other side of it, it's like, I could see at his age, because he's significantly older.
Oh, yes.
He's one of the more kind of veteran members of this community. And for him to have this sudden short reaction and just like, you know, whatever post midlife crisis he's going through and just like, it's.
Well, and I loved, you know, people like, well, Colum always was more of a thinker.
Yeah.
I think.
Could you imagine living through that your whole life?
Yeah.
And then suddenly he's at what he's around his 60s.
Something in there. Probably.
And then this guy who's maybe still only in his mid 30s, if not early 40s, who's doing all this shit. And you're just constantly just like,
can't listen to this anymore.
Like Ren and Stimpy a little
bit. Pinky in the brain.
Like I just feel a little bit of that vibe of just I can't keep pretending like I want to live this way.
No, of course. And I have to say too, the threat of cutting off fingers, you know, and for a second it seemed like that idea, I was like, oh no. And then it felt like it got set aside somehow because they had some sort of an interaction and no fingers were cut off after that. And then eventually, of course, it does like deliver on the digits.
Yeah, dude.
Which I was kind of glad for. Like I needed it to
I liked
to go
that there was
dark.
that rest and then come back, because I liked the idea that there was this moment of relent or of reception.
Yes.
That Colm has to him, or either he's receiving him. Yeah. And it's almost kind of in retaliation to that falter, that compassion slip. It's just like, yoink, like, here you go. God, like he's mad at himself. This is almost like a self-punishment. He's just trying to send the message of like, I see what you tried to do.
Yeah. And I'm not.
Yeah. You know,
it's rough. And it's not as if he lacks that empathy. I think, he's almost mad at himself for still caring.
It's a well, he's projecting it, and that makes it really tragic that way too.
There's one line this pretty much was all I wrote, like on my Letterboxd review. But do you think God gives a fuck about miniature donkeys? And he goes, I fear he doesn't. And it's like that. I fear he doesn't. I felt like that says so much about the way he's. Like
he's really thought about it, man.
He needs someone to take care of these people who hurt. Yeah. Because he's causing hurt. Yeah. And it makes it maybe easier to know that there's maybe a merciful God that will probably punish me and give him what he needs, you know, but it doesn't work that way. Yeah. And I mean, the fact that the donkey chokes on the fucking fingers.
Right. And that, I mean, really when the tables turn and the idea of just that, I think it really drives the point home that whatever internally you're experiencing and the frustration or lack of, I guess, the abandonment, I guess you feel, you still are accountable for how you treat others. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's I like where that shift, that sort of heel turn happens, where it really drives the point home that just like, however justified you think you are, you know, you still owe others to do your best. You owe yourself to do your best, kind of thing.
I mean, it's a cliche, but no man is an island.
Exactly.
That part where the priest doesn't forgive Colum.
I love it. Like, I actually kind of like the idea of him.
Like, I thought that was so funny just because, I better not die, I guess, until next week or I'll be fucked. And he's like, yes, you will be fucked. Yeah. Like, he's definitely making a point. And I mean, Siobhan says something too about like, you can't just stop being friends with somebody. And he's like, why? And she's like, why? It's not nice.
And just beyond that, it's like what you just brought up with the priest. It's like, even he is aware
of what's going
on an emotional, even if not until he understands just emotionally why he's reacting the way he does, that like, regardless of his connection to God and his position in the church, he is a member of a community.
Yep.
And that there are consequences to how you immediately treat other people. There's only honestly something even more like, just there's his reaction is wholesome in its own way. The fact that he gets mad, and regardless of this person's existential angst, which again I'm not trying to diminish, because I do have a respect actually, or like now that I've had some time away with the movie, I have a better understanding and appreciation of someone going through that kind of level of angst and frustration and then suddenly breaking. Yeah. And I think that's really what this character's going through. Yes. But just honestly, what a lonely experience that is, and what a destructive spiral he's going through as a result of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is why men need to go to therapy.
Men will literally start cutting off their fingers and letting donkeys choke on them before they go to therapy.
Yep, that is the theme of this movie. I have some production notes here. Cool. Just some details, because I like my history details. All right, so this was McDonagh. Like I said, he had been friends with these people, with Farrell and Gleason for a long time, and it was like, all right, let's make another movie. 2022, he announces this project coming. Filming starts August 2021. What do I have here? Carrie Condon, I'll get into this when we talk about Martin McDonagh, but he started as a playwright. And Carrie Condon, apparently, as a teenager and a very young actress, appeared at some of those plays. So when she agreed to join the project, it was kind of like a homecoming for her. And Barry Keoghan didn't even read the script, before he said yes. I mean, he read the script eventually, I'm sure. Sure. But he more or less was like, oh, Martin McDonagh's making a movie? Yes, I'm in. So all the principals are Irish, which I think is cool. And this is set, we mentioned it, in 1928, during the Irish Civil War. The Irish had just finished kicking out the English, and we're going to be this free state. But then there was like a contingent that wanted to... The fighting, which used to just be Irish against English, became Irish against Irish, because there were lots of different ideas about how they should proceed moving forward. Like, some people felt like, no, the whole island should be independent. Other people, not so much. The friendship that is breaking down between these kind of two men fighting each other, it's a microcosm of the larger Irish Civil War that's going on. And that's very deliberate. Like, it's
it's also one big metaphor.
Kind of, yeah. But this doesn't this feel like a myth, though? Does this feel like an old story or something?
I mean, really, you get the fingers involved.
I mean, it starts to feel like
it do feel that way.
Starts to feel like a Greek kind of myth or something.
And then the idea of the reaction of the, again, spoiler. We've spoiled so much, but then you just, one of his donkey eats one of the fingers, so then he gets mad at Colm and he's gonna burn his house, and he does, and then Colm just sits in the house, but then he sees the dog, so he has got to save the dog. Pyrex saves the dog and then later brings him back to Colm, and they're not friends, but it's still that last interaction is just like there's a certain level of base decency and
thanks for taking care of my dog,
and altruism, and anytime. Yeah. I mean, they hate each other at this point. He literally said, I wish you would burn down in the house, and Colm's like, I guess we're fine, right? And Piper's just, no, you should have died.
You were supposed to have died,
because it's just gone beyond the pale at that. But even then, it's like he goes, thank you for helping me. Thank you for saving my dog. And he's like, yeah, sure. Whatever. Yeah. It's very just, it's one of those sort of winded stories that drives basic compassion, I guess, or basic decency or something. Yeah. It's a moral, it feels like a morality play.
Yeah, no, really. Yeah. And because it's an island of so few people, and we haven't even talked about the sort of metaphorical banshee, Mrs. McCormick, right, who predicts there'll be 2 deaths on this island. Was that Jenny the donkey and Dominic? Were those the 2?
Because it seems maybe on the nose, but I think kind of
because that's what it is. I sort of it was a good way to add a I think, ambiguity to, is Colin going to die or live?
And we're so fixated on that we don't realize the bigger picture of like how
Who
their
else?
actions affect the others around them and cause them hurt.
Yep.
Or
Yeah.
strain. And so that's
Right.
yeah.
Because Dominic, after he learns the horrible things that Podrick has done, he's like, I don't.
It feels very
thought-
Oedipal,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The idea of like, oh, well, then, the two, maybe it's me and him, or him and whatever. I hate fuck this guy, whatever.
Yeah.
It'll be worth it.
Yeah.
And then you realize, like, no, there are like innocent people,
Who are getting-
innocent lives hurt.
Yeah. No,
as a result
absolutely.
of this sort of squabble.
Yeah, and Dominic being kind of the perfect vehicle of that.
Low key, like the dark joke there, him and a donkey, right? You know, like they're the innocents, right?
Yeah, that's so true. God. Yeah, there's something.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking, the purity of it.
Yeah, I think that really drives. That's why
Yeah.
I think it hurts as much as it does, because he, again, like
The exact wrong people. You know,
Right.
like it should be these assholes who are causing. Anyway. Okay. Now the costuming in this is great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Siobhan always looked good.
Oh,
She always looked good.
Always
I
looked good.
love they when they brought the mustard out, I was like, that's modern.
Mm-hmm.
That's a modern.
that's a modern take. There's
That's
also
that jacket was
She had
couldn't have existed before 2015. I'm sorry.
it definitely felt like a
Yeah.
like a recent tone.
Yeah. But I still enjoyed
Well,
it.
the costume designer knew that there was going to be a lot of interiors with low light. So
Yeah.
the emphasis on textiles became checks and stripes and dyeing
worked.
shirts. And
Who wouldn't have a crush on a girl in a mustard fit? Like, I mean,
yeah, she was good. There have
he
been.
had an honest reaction to the stimuli. in
Yeah,
my opinion.
totally.
But also, she looked great. She was
great.
She was great. She was a great character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Anyway.
there have been think pieces already, or basically advertisements, right, about the sweaters. People are going crazy about the
cozy as hell. in
Yes,
that
they
movie.
did. And it's funny. I was watching it, and I'm like, you really can't get a good sweater in LA.
It's true. But it almost felt like there was like this anachronistic quality about how well fitted everybody was.
A little bit.
But not, it didn't distract me too much from the rest of it.
I think also-
there were other things I was thinking about watching it, but I
think the 20s,
I did time and time again.
The 20s is a big part of that, I think, too, because
Yeah.
people really used to dress a lot better
Yeah.
as a baseline.
I mean, I'm sure too, just like the quality of the goods.
Yeah.
We weren't getting things,
like
being.
we wear trash in America.
we wear
I'm wearing
we
trash.
wear stuff. There's so much going on. There's
But
so many
also-
human rights
Right.
issues going into this.
Many human rights issues.
Yeah, there's a reason the quality isn't as good
That's
as it
true.
used to be.
That is true.
And it's mean.
No, of course.
But I get it.
But the look, the whole, it's just another detail, but
Yeah.
I really think the costume design deserves special attention.
Absolutely.
It's really great.
The whole feel of it. I was cold the whole movie. I
Yeah.
felt really I felt
I definitely
felt a burr.
had a feeling.
It was a
of,
cold theater, but
No,
also,
I know what you mean though,
it
because
creates a vibe.
I was thinking about how physically I've acclimated to the Southern California warmth and dryness,
Yeah.
and then watching this thing where, I mean, it almost like, how could anybody live there?
It's so cold
It's
and
like so raw and cold all the time.
And that it's like that. How's that serving the story too? Right? How frigid
Yeah.
that environment must feel.
well, and how important warmth of others is.
yes,
Like coming into the pub,
ding ding.
ding, like
yo.
I mean, that, by the way, that pub was built. They
Yeah.
built that on a cliffside.
Yeah.
So that was there's nothing fake about any of that.
It looked great. It looks so good. It's so beautifully shot.
Yeah, it was very the director is like, I want to build it here, and they're
Yeah.
are you crazy? Because it literally is on a cliffside, and
Yeah.
it was a temporary structure. They took it down after
I'm
the
making a
filming.
movie. God damn it!
I mean, really. And but the locals, I guess, for a little while it was open, it was a real fun time for everybody. They also built Siobhan and Park's house, and they built, what was it? There was one more thing. The pub. Oh, the village store, Mrs. O'Riordan's village store.
Yeah.
That whole harbor area just was very.
Yeah.
You got this sense of like the size of the place when you were down there.
Yeah.
But it's still, I don't know. There's something very quaint about picking up your mail from like a station, because no one's going to deliver it out to this like remote area.
It's charming. It's the tragedy and the charm just kind of,
I know. It's claustrophobic in a way. I mean, and how, it's like, is that about to drop? No.
Yeah.
And she won't respond. Like, I would go crazy. Colum's house Colum's house and Podrick's house were filmed on 2 different islands.
Yeah.
And so even though they're supposed to be like walking distance, and there were a lot of choices to make sure that Colum's home is featured in a very beautiful horseshoe kind of bay area. And that was meant to, again, somewhat be significant, that he's a person who's interested in aesthetics.
Yeah.
That he's in this more kind of isolated place you have to walk down to. Whereas Podrick is kind of more in just a regular ass house, and the donkeys wander in and out, and it's less concerned, I guess.
Right.
I thought that was just interesting.
I like that.
Yeah, and I mean, you brought up the animals earlier. I do have a quote here from Colin Farrell, who really loved working with the animals. Apparently, he said, animal actors, they don't take notes, and so he said, I think they pick up on energy and where it's supposed to go in relation to the natural rhythms of life, perhaps. So they're all very affecting. That said, Jenny the donkey did kick him once, and he said it was because I petted her on the nose and she didn't like that. The dog that was supposed to be Colum's dog bit Colin Farrell, and then the horse the horse cart that he's driving, he said at one point the horse nearly backed the cart like off a cliff into the Atlantic.
Oh, shit.
Despite the fact he
animals don't give a fuck.
They don't.
Yeah, there's a very like honest, like, a very reactive quality.
Oh, I mean, I saw some great, nothing article, but it was Eggers talking about I put a goat in that movie. It was the biggest mistake. Goats don't listen to anybody.
Yeah.
Also, I learned that during the filming, Farrell and Keegan lived together. So that kind of added to the reality of their bond, and apparently the conflict as well, because Barry Keoghan used to steal Colin Farrell's cornflakes and just make a mess. Like, Farrell said he would come home and it looked like a raccoon had just like gone through everything.
Like, all right.
So I guess they used it. Okay. One other thing, which is, and we'll have to share this photo on social media, but Farrell was routinely seen jogging around the island in these very short mint green shorts, and it became sort of a sighting. That
should share that.
We'll share it.
That's pretty important, actually. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty important.
Good.
You mentioned reviews. That you might have some reviews.
So let's do meow meow meow. All right, let me pull up now. That's all the. Okay, here we go. So, where do I want to start?
Tell me. This is the part where I sit back and listen.
Yeah, let me do this. All right. So on Rotten Tomatoes, currently it has a 98% on the fresh side, but the audience score 76%. So, there's a disparage, but I mean, overall positive. Let's see.
Those audience members are dumb.
76% fan day, 8.2 out of 10 IMDb, 80% Google users like it. Let me start actually on Letterboxd. I didn't take a picture of the average score there, but I think it's somewhere in like the high 3s, low 4s. Let's see. Freya period, 5 stars and a heart. A fine addition to the Barry Keoghan playing a little freaky weirdo cinematic universe.
That is what he's good at. Yeah, he's one of the only few actors to be in Marvel and DC.
Yeah. And it's interesting. A lot of these reviews, most of them are in the 4 to 5 star rating. And this is like in a community of people who are very irony poisoned, specifically Letterboxd, right? We're in it. So, I will not leave my donkey outside when I'm sad. Yep. A la 4 stars and a heart. And I agree with that. Karsten, 4.5 and a heart. It takes 2 to tango. So he just says it takes 2 to tango.
What's so funny is
so simple, but
that's a line in the movie. He's like, it takes 2 to tango, and he's like, I don't want to tango. He's like, but you danced with your dog.
Yeah, but you danced with your dog. It's so funny. It's so straightforward, right? And then someone's like, oh no, okay, what else? So Brian Truitt, USA Today, said Condon and Keegan give Banshees extra personality and verve, while Farrell and Gleason are the two halves of its beating heart. I think that's pretty. I think
that sounds like a USA Today.
A USA. Okay, there you go. I wanted to share just because it sounds simple, but it's out there. It was a 3.5 out of 4. He gave it. Oh man, you want to hear this negative? And Hornaday Washington Post will splatter next to it. McDonagh is a master world builder. Whether you want to live in those worlds for 2 hours of your only life is purely a matter of individual taste. 2 out of 4.
All right.
Man, harsh.
I'm sorry. Aren't you a film critic?
I don't know. It was pretty intense. It was very... I mean, I get... Like, here's the thing. Like, I get the negative... It's a bleak thing. That's what you're partially signing up for, right? So,
yes.
When I say I vehemently hate something like the killing of a sacred deer, for instance, it's not his movie, but still, the idea of like, well, this is what you kind of sign up for with this criteria of actors and the script and this director and whatever. And it's like, I don't know. So it's kind of, you gotta.
It's tricky because I
think at least a 3 out of 4 is, I think, fair if you're going to use that level of stars. To acknowledge that this was a very aptly done film,
but not your cup of tea.
Even if it's not your cup of tea, it's still aptly done.
We've given, I think, reviews to things where it was like, listen, it's not our favorite, but we appreciate how much work is into it.
I'll appreciate how it succeeds in its objective.
Yeah, exactly.
We have, so then now I'm on Rotten Tomatoes, the user scores, and I guess I didn't get this guy's thing, but he only said 1.5, said depressing, negative, ridiculous. The author must have been disturbed.
Well, and then he might agree.
I mean, the next 2 under there are 5 stars. This is the best movie I've seen all year, Tommy M. That being said, it's not for everyone. Humorous at times, and you'll laugh a couple of times, but this is no comedy. E. Murphy. The actors were wonderful, as was their change in development. The story explores community and personal disruptions and ribs. And then he gave this the highest score, 5 stars, but then goes a bit over the top. All the more reasons like that, the parable territory of melodrama, right?
I mean, like, movies just can be over the top. They don't have to be, but they can be.
My favorite of the Rotten Tomatoes reviews is Robert F. Verified.
Oh, okay.
Who said, at the time I took the screenshot earlier, 14 hours ago, he said, 1 star, I am 66 years old and it is one of the worst movies I have ever seen.
That's a man who doesn't have any friends.
That's a man who is 66 years old.
He was mad because that movie read him like a book.
I just think it's funny. That reaction is so like of that character, just like, this is my age and I'm going to let everybody know. And this is the amount of life I've lived and I don't have time for this shit.
It's so funny. I was thinking about what you were saying about him having this kind of very modern or postmodern anxiety. And I also sort of love that moment where Siobhan kind of confronts him.
Yeah.
And is like, but, like when he says, like, he's talking about how the great musicians it doesn't matter that they were assholes because they made this great music. And she's kind of contending that, no, like, it's better to be a good, kind person. And there's a new film coming out that's it's 100% based on the diaries of Leo Tolstoy's wife. And I should know her name. That's terrible. But I
don't fucking know her name. It's okay.
Well,
you don't have to know her name.
I didn't know this woman existed. And then I didn't know she kept diaries. But they turned her diaries into this film. And it's, I'm sure that guy wouldn't like it very much. But,
sure.
Because it's largely just a woman sort of walking around and expressing these things that she wrote in the journal. Anyway, all this is to say, there was one line that really caught my ear in the trailer, which was, no one will know that you never brought your child water. Or like, no one will know that you couldn't help them when they really needed you. No one will know that. I'll know that. Yeah. But no one else will know.
What is the burden of that?
And just, it's like all these quote unquote great men.
Yeah.
They had some woman cooking for them.
I think this is interesting. It's interesting. Yeah. Thinking about that reminds me of Tar then, the idea of kind of the relation of like greatness and also, humanity. But how do you treat other people on a day-to-day level?
Yeah.
What is, and who are you as a person?
And it is hard not.
What good is a legacy if you don't live a good life kind of thing? I don't know. It's a little bit of that push
whereas
and pull.
He seemed kind of unconcerned about that. Like, no, I can be whatever I want as long as I write something great.
Right.
And I don't have an answer or a resolution to that because, I don't think people should be unkind to each other if they can avoid it. But
I mean, I just can see like the reply back and forth on a Twitter thread of just someone being like, no, she's shitty. She didn't accomplish anything, so fuck her. I'm thinking about like the Tolstoy thing, right?
Yeah.
Her, it must have been easy for her to sit around and like write about bitching about her husband while he was doing all this great fucking shit.
Yeah.
So have you ever actually even read a Tolstoy book?
Yeah,
I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
You just don't like women.
I mean, yeah, that is a lot of it.
But it's that back and forth of just but it is important to be a good person in your waking life.
Yeah. Well, and in reading about this, I saw a really interesting, it was like a psychiatrist or a psychologist, I'm not sure which, sort of analyzing the film. And they brought up this sort of frightening, well, maybe not frightening, but they brought up this kind of sad truth, which is that men, generally speaking, if they get married, they outsource the sort of social calendar part of their lives to the wife, and she becomes responsible for keeping him attached to people. That's actually society.
The third shift. You got the first shift, which is her job, her girl boss. Second job, when she's coming home doing all the chores and cooking, because she's still supposed to do. Yes. Third shift, we gotta have have game night.
Right.
We gotta schedule game night.
But generally, and this isn't shocking, right? Women are better at maintaining friendships over a long period of time.
Not me, but sure.
Well, apparently women are better at also having those, like, this is my friend and the two of us are friends, rather than sort of a circle of people that you have to compete with or
right.
Whereas I'm not saying this is true of all men, but this psychiatrist was observing just that many older men who maybe aren't married, or their wives pass, or they get divorced, they just don't think it's worth it. They can't, like, they literally cannot be bothered to make a friend, even though it's very important to have friends.
Yeah.
We have a lot of angry, hurt men walking around.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, like, we've socialized them into this by, like, creating these stupid, like, roles for each other. And I think this movie is so much about, like, how foolish and how myopic you can be, like, and how
when you're too hyper individualistic,
right,
really,
thinking
again,
any
I
of
just
this
think in
matters.
that level, and on that level of, like, just at a certain point you have to acknowledge, like, you're making an active decision here.
Yes, definitely.
There are solutions and you're not acknowledging them. And it's because you have this idea of wanting to, again, like, create a legacy, or you're trying to
and then cutting off
exceed
the fingers,
your significance, as opposed to finding it's just him feeling the weight of, like, his own potential insignificance.
Yeah.
That he has nothing, that he'll have not left a mark, as opposed to just acknowledging that he may have at least have been a good person to people, and that's how he could have left his mark, or whatever.
Or just, or the village liked his music, or
just what like, or that maybe postmortem, he wouldn't really know, like, he thinks that that's what he's really going for, but it's in his life he needs to feel some sense of, it's like grander purpose, I guess.
Yeah. Other movies that are out around, I mean, it's basically now but this was released in October, so Black Adam, My Policeman, After Sun, Ticket to Paradise, Wendell and Wild all came out that same weekend. Yeah. Excuse me. Well, that was it for reviews, right? Or
I'm done.
Cool.
Yeah.
Martin McDonagh, he's in our director's chair this week. He was born March 26, 1970 in Camberwell, London, which is a largely Irish community. Both his parents were Irish. His father was a construction worker and his mother was a cleaner / part-time housekeeper. Even though he was raised in London, he spent his summers at Connemara, which is where his father is from. That's on the west coast of Ireland. So he, kind of had these, like, romantic summers away from London that probably seemed really different. He's the second of two children, and he grew up attending Irish Catholic schools, mostly having Irish priests and mostly being around other Irish people. His older brother pretty much was the river of influence for him. Anything his older brother liked or got, he pretty much would get into as well. And that included things like The Clash or The Pogues or things like that. In 1984, Martin attends the theater for the very first time. And he loved Al Pacino from The Godfather and many other things. So he happened to go see David Mamet's American Buffalo on the London stage because Al Pacino was playing the role. Later, he also caught Larry Kramer's Normal Heart because Martin Sheen was in it, and similar reasons. He really loved Badlands, so he wanted to see him. Martin left school at about 17 He said, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to educate myself towards some kind of job. That just seemed stupid. So he basically lived on welfare, which is about 50 pounds a month. Made it work. His mother was like, you need to get a job. And, he'd go and interview somewhere, but it would be so obvious in the interview that he was not interested. So he wouldn't get the job. And when he finally, when he did have to get a job, it was stocking shelves. And he realized like, oh, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. So it was somewhat, but he was very comfortable with just like living on the dole. In 1992, his parents moved back to Ireland, so leave him and his brother at the house that they had. And at that point, he and his brother buy a VCR, and then they just start watching like movies like Mean Streets, and Taxi Driver, and all these things, and then a ton of television. I mean, just indiscriminate amounts of television, anything. Soap operas during the day, plays at night, just constant television, which I think there's something kind of like really interesting about that, like that he just was absorbing anything. Anyway, his brother also was interested in filmmaking, and he went on a fellowship at USC for screenwriting. He left Martin alone. So Martin's alone in this house now, or apartment in London, and he begins to write every day. And he does that for about 9 months. And during that time, he produces drafts of sort of 7 plays, like the large corpus of his work as a playwright. And that's just it. He has this really successful career as a playwright and dramatist. In fact, he was, at one point, the only dramatist in Shakespeare to have 4 works professionally produced on the London stage in 1 season. I was reading about, found an old article about it, and it was saying there's only one play that hasn't been on stage, The Banshees of Inisherin, which Martin McDonagh says isn't any good. So there was a draft, although apparently it's nothing like what's in the movie. He wrote a lot of plays. I can't list them all, but just a few of them. The Beauty Queen of Leanne, A Skull in Connemara, The Lonesome West, The Pillowmen. And he was really hailed like as this hugely talented playwright. At one point, I just want to share this brief story. He won Most Promising Playwright Prize, which was the London Evening Standard kind of theater award ceremony. Big award ceremony he goes. And he was really nervous, and he drank quite a bit of vodka before he even got there. And he said by the time they got there, it really hit. And when, him and his other Irish, friends or whatever, the room starts toasting the Queen, and he's like, yeah, we got a little rowdy, because good Irish boys, that's what we do. But apparently it was so it was so bothersome to people that Sean Connery came over and told them to shut up.
Oh man.
Martin McDonagh just said, fuck off. And he went away, and he didn't think anything of it. And they said, in the morning I woke up and there was this big headline in the Daily Mail that was like, Irish playwright slags off Bond or something. And he said it was actually kind of great, because it was like, great, I can work with that image of like a volatile, edgy Irish writer. Perfect. Anyway, all this gets left behind because he decides to get really into film. And he makes a short called Six Shooter in 2006. And then he makes the film In Bruges. And this is really bringing us up to speed, I think, for most people at this point. He's made some other films, including 7 Psychopaths, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and, of course, now The Banshees of Inisherin. So he's only made 4 feature films and 1 short. But people generally are like, this is a pretty stellar resume. Like, people feel like these are all great projects. I never saw 3 Billboards.
It was not one of my personal favorites, but I have seen all In Bruges, 7 Psychopaths, and
so you're well versed.
I feel like I'm at that point where I'm in the general zeitgeist now with it, and I can definitely say I appreciate his overall message of each of those films. I think that all of them are very well cast, and I think that what he understands and how that's manifested into the way those films are produced and how they're shot and who's in them and the accolades they may or may not receive. I think it's a very keen understanding of this delicate balance between banter and the engagement that comes from the rhythm of banter, and still there being some level of like a chemistry that exists between the two people. Like, I'm thinking like Sam Rockwell, Frances McDormand, or I'm thinking like even with the way they use oh my gosh, I'm suddenly blanking on his name right now. what's his face from the Deer Hunt, Christopher Walken. Christopher Walken and everyone he's in Seven Seconds, and also Sam Rockwell's in that too. Yeah, I mean, these are the kinds of actors who are able to give that's kind of quippy dialogue and simultaneously infuse it with like that added level of endearment or vulnerability. I think that's really what people are drawn to, especially with someone like Sam Rockwell. I think like the love for him is that it's not just he's a quippy dude. You know, otherwise he'd only have ever done movies like Choke. He would never be doing anything outside. It's when he like turns Thisbe into a tearjerker. You know, it's that kind of,
we've talked about
that aspect of him that makes him, and that's what I think appeals to this writer-director's work. And I think that's what that like to be able to like commonality is. It's finding that and Colin Farrell is a fantastic actor for that, and Brendan Gleeson. So in Bruges, I think is like, I think a lot of people, not just myself, would say that's one of, if not like the best of his works, because it is concise. And it's mostly this relationship. It's a hyper-specific location that has a level of like affection for its environment and simultaneously can kind of see the humor of that world and some of those like limitations mentally. And that's, you know, I
mean, his works are often described as being very dark.
There is a common thread of that, and how there is this like very sheer, no, you're good. Like, I feel like at the end, there's sort of like there's a through line of earnestness in all of his work, actually.
The heart is open.
There is something vulnerable. Like when someone says they like any of those movies, I can see there is like, as much as you like the quippy shit, I think there's something that's kind of like oddly a little like wholesome and cutesy, not in a bad way, but there's sort of this sort of...
There's pathos.
Pathos. That's the word.
Yeah.
In all of his work. And it's just such a through line. That's why Christopher Walken has his thing at the end. That's why Frances McDormand is as motivated, and then how Sam Rockwell reacts. And you know, it's
he works with really great actors.
It's a through line.
Like he does.
His characters seem to always have whatever bravado or tiff they share. There is still this level of, at some point, like vulnerability or like emotional weakness, not weakness in a condescending way, but at some point there will come some conflict or confrontation that has to happen with this character at a moment of weakness, where someone who hates them or has every reason not to help them will help them. And that has happened actually in every single one of his movies.
Interesting.
Where someone who has nothing to gain other than just the desire to help someone else in need. I mean, that happens. Someone at their low point that the other person has no reason to help. That happens in 3 Billboards. It happens in 7.
It happened in this one when he gets punched out by the cop.
Film.
Colum helps him back up onto the, like, in the way he like.
There's something I really like about his stories. And in Bruges too. So even Ray finds this, like, there's no reason we don't care. He wants to die, and like. And we have to get in there. Just do it. Like, and still, you have Brendan Gleeson being like, no, I want to help him find his purpose. You know, there's that internal desire to just still want to do something.
I think his people have real depth and humanity,
compassion.
Compassion.
That's
we don't see compassion.
My winded way of just saying there is the underlying current of passion or compassion in his work.
But you know, that's funny. It took us so long to get there, though, maybe because it's not depicted much.
It's so dry. Like, I think he's really trying to, and this is a good example of a story that whether you like it or not, you know, not everybody would be on board with it. And I don't know if it's the most rewatchable. Jumping ahead to, is this rewatchable? I'm a little split on that, because I don't know if I could go through everything that leads up to this,
again, this
final release of like mercy and compassion. I don't think like that. I think it's just so it gets very bleak. This is one of his darkest.
It is bleak.
Of all of those films we mentioned. This is one of his darkest, or the most sort of. I think I
would watch it again.
I love that.
Yeah, counterpoint.
I love that for you, girl.
I love. I would definitely watch it again.
I think like 7 Psychopaths, I think some of the biggest issues with it are just that like it is almost a little schmaltzy at times. Not schmaltzy, but just it's almost too casual about some of the situations they get it.
Yeah.
And then 3 Billboards, I think there's some of that vibe too. It's almost a little too, not glib, but there's, I think sometimes almost the earnestness maybe holds people back overall, or because it's too obvious, I guess. The sort of humanistic element is like, it's too, I don't know. This maybe is one of the better examples of realistically how it would play. I do think In Bruges is the best marriage of the two concepts.
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
of the more recent ones that people would probably be most familiar with. I think that In Bruges and this are probably the first two most more sort of like realistic or easiest to kind of engage with.
I hear what you're saying.
In terms of the level of like stakes and how seriously people take the stakes.
Yeah. I love when...
Yeah, that's what it is. 3 Billboards and 7 Psycho. I think the stakes don't feel fully accepted sometimes by some of the characters.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Whereas everybody participates in the stakes of this. Like it's...
Yeah.
I mean, and some of that, is perhaps the community being just what it is. And the more I learned about McDonagh, the more I realized that this film really feels personal. It resembles a lot of his playwriting work, and that it's set in Ireland, and that it has this... I read something...
It's a very specific relationship.
Yeah. I read something that... Or he wrote a lot, before he ever wrote a screenplay or a play, he wrote a lot of little grotesque stories. And one was about, a man coming through somebody's village and this boy being a little bit afraid, but then inviting him to have something to eat. And the man says, I'm going to give you a gift. So, you may not understand its importance right now. And then the man cuts off all the toes on the boy's foot.
Oh.
Yeah. And the whole thing is later, you come to find out that guy is actually the Pied Piper. And later, when he's leading all the kids out of the village, this kid can't follow because he doesn't have the toes. So it saves him from that. It's just a weird, dark, little fucked up idea. But again, this strangely dark fables.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're not strange. I mean, Brothers Grimm is known for being, grim.
Sure.
That's where the word comes from.
We were so Disney-fied. And everything's been so...
I think that's
has been so...
sanitized.
Brita filtered, if you will.
Yeah, filter all the impurities out of that.
All the negative implications about children being seen and not heard, and women being meek and accepting their circumstances. And so mostly what those stories are.
They are. They're always warnings.
Be a good little lad. Good little lass.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Or else they'll get you.
But yeah, so that's,
Anyway, well, we skipped our best supporting player.
Oh, shit.
I'm just going to say,
This is Barry.
Of course, Barry Keoghan.
Barry.
Of course. Dominic.
This is Barry.
We kind of got that
Or the
out
dog was actually really sweet too. It was a cute dog.
Jenny the donkey, if I'm going to pick an animal.
Well, yeah, we pick an animal. You're right. Best supporting animal goes to the donkey, but then it makes it sad.
Yes, it does.
It's so sad.
Both my supporting picks die.
Damn, dude.
Fuck.
Is this your favorite?
Yep.
Should watch 7 Psychopaths. It'll cheer you up a little.
Will it? Okay.
Actually, maybe compared to this.
Perhaps.
This is a sad one. This was a sad one.
One little detail before we say goodbye. I learned that Martin McDonagh is in a relationship with Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Good for him.
Yeah, good for him.
Good for him.
Yeah. Also, they're both well-established writers. There's a lot they have in common. You can email us at abreathoffreshmovie@gmail.com. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, or just with your mouth to other people.
Use your mouth.
You could tell people, hey, do you like movies?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about them?
I think there's worse people than us out there.
There are.
I think we've been doing pretty good.
We're excellent.
I think we are excellent.
We are
and
excellent.
you be excellent. What if we just from now on just fully appropriated just the
be excellent to each other?
Yeah, why don't we just be excellent? That's what my high school junior year English teacher was always like, be excellent to each other.
Yeah.
Such a get a personality.
I thought you were gonna say that was like the graduation theme or something.
Honestly,
could have been.
It depending on who would have run our school. If he had been the principal, that probably would have been in the yearbooks.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know. I threw away mine. All right, you guys.
Yeah, I destroyed mine. All right.